To Snowy Valleys Council ordinary meeting of the 15th of April 2021. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in the meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Any part of the meeting that's held in closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the case of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the wardens. Do not use the lift. If participating in the meeting from an alternative venue, please enact the evacuation plan from that location if required. Council is now operating under temporary provisions expiring on 31 December 2021 of Local Government General Regulation 2005, which gives Council discretion to allow councillors to attend remotely under exceptional circumstances. Councillors, welcome back to the Chairman Committee. I have here leave of absence from Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Wright. There's no other leave. Do I have a move to accept those? Councillor Ham and Councillor Benjamin. Put that motion all in favour of accepting those. That's very unanimously. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest. We have Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I declare that I had a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in relation to report 11.7 due to employing the applicant, and will remain in the meeting during the discussion and will participate in the voting.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Any others? No. There's no public forum. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, 18th of March 2021. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Anything arising? All in favour of accepting those? Unanimous, thank you. 5.2, extraordinary meeting. Councillor Ham. Councillor Benjamin. Arising. Councillor Ham.
Thank you very much. The IPNR document seemed to have created a bit of discussion. Just want to clarify the public exhibition for a period of 28 days. Has there been any extension on it?
Yep. Through the Chair, Councillor Ham, yes, we've extended by a fortnight because of the public wishing to have further comment, and it now closes on Friday the 7th of March.
Right. And I was also asked if Council, some people are finding it hard to get onto the website and give their feedback. Is there an alternative way of doing it?
Through the Chair, Councillor Ham, yes, we'll make some forms available at our offices and libraries. It is quite easy through the website, 2 clicks from the front page to go through and make comments, but some people prefer to pick up a form, and yes, we'll make those available. Otherwise, people can just send an email in or a letter into Council, and that will automatically make that into the process.
So if they have a hard copy, they just give it back over the desk at Council.
Yes, so long as it makes it in on that due date.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Councillor Ham. Put the motion all in favour. Carried. Thank you. Councillors, first is 10.1, Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly. unable to attend this in person, so we have a mover, Councillor Ross and Councillor Smith. Councillor Ross.
Yes, I would be happy to go to this space in person. I think it's a very important conference to go to. It offers a lot of opportunities for networking and to find out what other local government councils are doing.
Thank you. Any further comments? Emotional. So I've got Councillor Ross, the
Yes.
mover, and Councillor Smith, the second. So councillors available to go as myself and Councillor Ross. Any other councillors? Councillor Smith? You're available. Thank you. In person or in person? In person.
It's just a regular meeting.
So, councillors, do you want to debate as to whether we send 1, 3, 2? No?
Personally, I'm happy for 3. I do like it being more than, certainly more than 1, because then you can debate it.
Any other councillors? Okay, 3.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the budget's there. It's up to them what they want to go to.
All right, I'll put this first 3, put the motion, all in favour? Sending 3 councillors, thank you. Carried unanimously. 10.2, finance performance as of 28 February 21. Councillor Hammond. Councillor Benjamin, thank you. Councillor Hammond.
Just if I could compliment the CFO on her explanation that she does give on the following budget, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I am, there's so much discussion at the moment about sustainability and our budget and our money. I'm just wondering how the bushfire recovery is affecting our budget, and you know, are there costs still coming in, and how much out of pocket are we with the bushfire? Is it ongoing? Because I know on farms it is. It just, you keep coming across more and more things that are being affected. Just how are we sitting with bushfire?
Through the chair, Councillor Ham, we have had a number of issues pop up, in particular the road corridor cleaning. That stands currently at way over $5 million, but it is all claimable. It is affecting our budget, obviously, because we have to expend it before we can claim it. And we also had some items that we were able to claim this financial year that were actually in last financial year's bottom line, rather than being able to claim them. Ongoing, it's mainly the recovery effort through our recovery officer and certain events that we're hosting, but most of that is funded.
So with, you know, money being outstanding, what's the time lag from us spending it to when we get the money back?
Through the chair, Councillor Ham, the time lag can be a couple of days, or it can be nearly a year. We started cleaning up the road corridor, not sure, probably about April last year, and we only just have been able to put the claim through.
So we
carry the cash expenditure.
And did you just say 4 million?
5
million, and we've carried that.
Yes.
That's really very good information. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Put the motion on the vote. Carried unanimously. Takes us to governance and financial report 10.3, statement of investments. Order. Mr. Cross. Mr. Lada. Mr. Cross.
I'm just appalled at the interest rate we're being able to attract to our money. It's just 0.5%, 0.75%. It's so sad.
That's less income for us, yes.
Yes.
Compared to when, 5, 10 years ago, when it was a substantial amount, yes.
So
Good news if you buy a house.
Anything further? Councillor.
Yes, I noticed that
there is support of local banks as well as the major banks in our investment policy. Are we spreading that around to a number of different banking organisations?
Through the chair, Councillor Smith, we have an investment policy that requires us to spread it across a number of institutions and also according to rating of institutions, and it includes our local branches and our local banks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
I was just going to say, in regard to those local banks, are we making sure that those that we're supporting are those that are putting back into the community in some other fashion rather than just the comparing interest rates?
Through the chair, Councillor Louder, we do take it into account, but it is not part of our investment policy. We always take it into account if it is a competitive offering.
Councillor Harris.
I'm just looking at the road stabilisation, Sealing Roads, and just wondering an update on Clark's Hill and how that project's been going. It does take a long time to get down to Cancoban at the moment, and just wondering how that's going with it. Just about
Statement of investments. I guess the roads are investments, aren't they? Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeah, Clark's Road works, the fire recovery works, they're now complete. That work site's been handed back to council. Very pleased with the outcome.
So there's no one working on that road anymore all day. And what was the total cost of it?
The total work was in the order of about $2.3 million, fully funded through the disaster.
Councillor Cross.
Yeah, how much of, in the cash disbursements, how much of that would be recoverable through the bushfire recovery funds?
Through the chair, Councillor, the roads to recovery claim is a separate claim to bushfire. The removal of the fire damaged trees is fully recoverable, and so is the stabilisation works and the bushfire recovery.
So we're not out of pocket.
No.
Excellent.
Thank you. Nothing further? Motion, all in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Review of investment policy for public exhibition.
I suppose this brings up what was discussed last time, was about using local banks over major banks. I think you probably covered that last time.
Thank you. Motion, all in favour? It's carried unanimously. Sale of surplus land parcels, Gilbert Street, Cumberland. Councillor Smith, Councillor Hill. Councillor Smith.
Yes, that parcel of land has been untended for some time, and it would be good to see it in the hands of a private owner who's able to maintain it to a reasonable standard and make good use of it.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any further? Any favour? Unanimous, thank you. Naming of golf links estate proposed name. Road name. Councillor Ham, Councillor Fox.
So, yeah, this is more a question about process. So we did get two feedbacks about maybe that it could be called Alex Henkel or Dermot Drive as potential. How is it decided?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we considered those submissions, but yeah, they weren't deemed to change the original proposal and request. In that, yeah, there were a couple of different reasons. So it was, yeah, the termination of the officers was that Barrow Drive, as originally proposed, was the preferred option. Concerns that Darren Drive not likely to be approved by the Geographic Naming Board, and the other requirement,
Alex Henkel.
similar.
So, okay, so any changes would have to go through that board?
Yes. So we need to get approval from the Geographic Naming Board. So they've checked that the road names aren't double up being used elsewhere, and then there's certain conditions that require to be met before they will approve the road name, and then we can bring it to council and ask for council.
Can I put the motion all in favour? It's carried unanimously, thank you. Moving on, draft backflow prevention policy for public exhibition. Councillor Lara, Councillor Cross. Councillor Lara.
Just as further report without the public.
Councillor Cross.
Yes, what is backflow and how would people know whether they needed to have got that actual facility so that their water, how do they know that their water is safe?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The backflow prevention device is installed as part of a meter installation. So it is part of your meter. Generally, all residential connections include backflow prevention. I suppose the idea of it is it's like a non-return valve. So, for example, if there was a burst water main in the street and that resulted in the water being siphoned back into the reticulation system, so you might have an irrigation system connected to your tap, for example, and if there's a burst and that draws water into the reticulation system, which could potentially contaminate it, that prevention device prevents that from happening.
So this is really a formality of a process rather than everyone has to worry about whether they've got this device.
You know, no need to worry. They're installed as part of the meter. No issue there, and it is a regulatory requirement and a regulatory requirement to have a policy in place. And obviously, if there's new connections made through development, they will.
Thank you.
Any further? All in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Cities Power Partnership Progress Update. Good to see this coming through. Councillor Smith moving it. Councillor Cross moving it. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I note, of course, that it is a progress report or an update of what is in fact happening. I note number 2 on the recommendation that the council notes progress made on delivering the actions. Renewable energy, install renewable energy on council buildings. Can we have an update in more detail from Mr. Couch on that?
Yes, once again.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We're very active in whenever we're doing any works on council buildings or new infrastructure, we're always looking at opportunities to be more energy efficient. And I suppose, that includes the installation of solar panels. And as detailed in that report, we installed solar panels on the Tudor pool with the new expansion of the Tudor pool, the Tumble pool, and looking at also at the works depot here in Tudor, the works depot in Tumbarumba, Can Coburn as well, the works depot there. So these are all opportunities to install solar and energy-wise infrastructure, if you like. Also with the aerodrome upgrade, we'll make sure it's considered as part of that project, the new and the hall. Very much consideration of the design of that, and also with the Tune evacuation centre, if that progresses, and certainly incorporating energy efficient devices and solar panels as part of the design process for that project.
Further to that question, the upgrading of the street lights across the LGA, how's that progressing?
Yeah, largely complete. So we can see around all our townships and villages that LEDs are largely still a few pedestrian lights and stuff. So project's largely complete. It's been a great outcome.
And talking about solar panels, any idea on getting battery backups to batteries to store the energy that's generated?
Yeah, certainly giving consideration to that. At the moment, it's not quite stacking up for us economically, but certainly gets considered. And as that technology changes and we can make it stack up economically, it's an area we'd like to look at in detail.
Another question we need to see part 3, where we're talking about getting an electric pool vehicle, I noticed that you're going to be reassessing that in 24 months. Given the way technology is moving, I would prefer to see it 12 months to be reviewed after that. So, my understanding is that electric vehicles do not require servicing, so I'm just wondering why there's an additional thought around cost associated with having an electric vehicle.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's quite reasonable. Yeah, we've done a review just recently, as referred to in the report. Probably the area of biggest concern for us was the resale of the electric vehicles once they're 4 or 5 years old. So yeah, and I very much recognise that technology is changing very rapidly. So yeah, it makes sense that we look at that again in 12 months' time.
And another question on D, it's sustainable transport. Is there a consideration of putting bike racks around town? Is that going to be part of our master plan of the trails that we've just got funding for?
Yes, that's my understanding. It includes bike parking in there, so that refers to bike racks and making sure that they're located in the right place where that right maximum benefit. And yeah, when there's enough space to park up bikes, not interfere with congestion or vehicle traffic. So they're certainly considered.
Sorry, just another question on E. Climate change. We had put out expressions for interest for climate change adaptation advisory committee. We have an update on where that's at, please.
It's through you, Mr. Chair. We did put out expressions of interest for that committee. We received only 4 expressions of interest as part of that process. 3 of those expressions of interest were from people outside of the municipality, and 1 internal to the municipality. That's not enough really to form a committee at this stage, so we're exploring the options as to how we can move forward.
Is there an option available to us as councillors?
One of the options that I'd like to put forward to councillors is that the council come together, the elected councillors, to form a climate change adaptation committee or group, and that we put something on the agenda for our workshops. So at least monthly we can look at climate change adaptation.
I think
if councillors are willing to do that, we can do that.
I think given the city's partnership, having us being available, having experts around the whole world available to us, that would be a really powerful way of looking at the issues that we face here and how other people in other areas of the world have sorted those out.
So certainly once we get our group together, which is our councillors, we get a time for the workshop, we can then use expertise from outside the area, within the area, wherever we can put somebody on as well to advise us. So that's the way I suggest we work.
I think it's disappointing that we didn't get any more than 1 expression of interest. That is very disappointing, given everyone's interest in climate change.
Councillor,
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think it just demonstrates just how empty some of these things are. Some of these so-called climate change experts that are out there whinging about what we're doing in relation to finance and everything else, and how incompetent we are. Where are they putting their names forward? They're not, because they're empty vessels, and they're not interested in doing anything productive. Just happy to sit back and snide.
thank you as a comment, Councillor, which I think it was. Statement, yes. So, anything further? No, thank you. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. We possibly could have gone into committee for that, but I think there are all questions, so I'll allow that. With the move and second is indulgence. Can we change 24 to 12?
Oh, it's sure. Is that me?
No, it's not. But I'm happy to.
Councillor Cross.
Councillor Smith.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Okay. And with that change, we'll put the motion all in favour. It's unanimous.
Mr. If I could just clarify that item in there about the climate change committee, there's flexibility within those words to implement it the way we've just discussed, and operationally we'll take that on board.
Thank you. Proposal to establish a sculpture trail in snow gullies. It's rather more exciting. One for the business paper, Councillor Ham and Councillor Benjamin.
Can you believe this? That someone wants to put 3 amazing sculptures in Tumbarumba? It's just like, you don't often get sent a letter by that. And wherever you are out there, thank you very, very much. It's just very, very exciting. And it looks like it's the beginning of a sculpture trail for the whole of Snowy Valley. So just so delighted. I suppose just because we put our toes in having a sculpture in Tumbarumba once, and at 2 o'clock in the morning someone climbed it and fell off and got hurt, that we have to be careful that that can't happen. But, and the other thing I'd like with it is just wondering whether the in Tumbarumba they've got an excellent artists community, Artists on Parade. Just wondering if they're involved in any of the decisions about where it goes, what the sculpture is, anything like that.
Mr. Holt.
Through you, Mr. Chair. There's been significant and wide-scale consultation with art groups across the whole municipality by Sculpture by the Sea in the lead up to the submission of their grant application to the LERF Fund. And I believe this included Artists on Parade, it included the Tumut Five Ways Art Society, and I believe he had over 40 meetings with individuals, groups and businesses in the lead up to that. So additionally, a local curatorial committee has been identified and will participate in the selection of the artworks and the sculptures, in addition to a broader curatorial committee that works with Sculpture by the Sea as well. So there's a fairly comprehensive consultation and engagement process having taken place, and one anticipated to take place should they be successful in getting the grant.
Yeah, oh well, and certainly with these 3 coming to Tumbarumba, just very, very great.
Councillor.
There's been a lot of discussion around depreciation of assets and the depreciation costs. Would there be anything for us to worry about in that regard?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Myself and Suzanne have discussed this quite at length. And we also received information regarding other local governments and how they manage those issues in relation to public art. And so it's proposed that the sculptures live on the assets register, but for insurance purposes only. And as such, they will not be depreciated. Other councils, there are precedents set in other councils where they don't depreciate the public art, largely because it's very hard to put a value on it. And a lot of it is irreplaceable.
So we just have to make our toilets artistic.
Comment please, Mr. Mayor, only that on page 53, I'm very impressed with this project and the contribution of 45 jobs within the installations improved. So that's a significant contribution to our community across our shop.
Yes. Thank you. Nothing further. Motion. In favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Approved. Okay, 11.6, lot 12, Bomboli Avenue, Bomboli, proposed rural drilling with attached down sewer garage and shed. But we have 2 of these in a row. So this one is lot 12. We have the mover. Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Ham. Councillor Benjamin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a little bit disappointed with this and the refusal of it. I don't agree with refusing this particular recommendation, but yeah, hopefully we can come up with a resolution for it that's hopefully successful.
Councillor.
May I suggest we go to committee on this one?
Certainly, Councillor Smith, you can move that way. Do you have a second? Councillor Ham. Do we have consensus? Councillor Benjamin, you know, yes, that's, Councillor Smith, yes, that's unanimous. Thank you. We're in committee. Councillor Smith.
In reading through the information that Mr. Holton has provided for us as background for this proposal, I find it very difficult to figure out the various opposing views by various experts in the field to really get a good understanding of where we actually sit on this this whole thing. And therefore, it's certainly my view that we accept the recommendations of our council officers because they clearly have a better appreciation of the detail of the various reports that are given to us here. And it is their view that there is not sufficient information on which we should overrule the zoning rules and accept this application and grant a development application. So it is certainly my view that we should accept the opinions and the views of the qualified council officers and their advice that they have sought.
Councillors, that if we do move that way and we accept those, the applicant still has the opportunity to go to land and environment court.
Indeed.
So it's not the end process. Councillor White.
Yeah, look, I too have some issues with the process, and unfortunately, it's like a lot of things. Local government gets stuck, you know, with the responsibility of making a decision, really that of other authorities to intervene. You know, I'm not sure that it should be left to 9 board members on a council to decide about issues that relate to flooding when, you know, there's expert authority areas that could intervene on these things. I think the real sad thing about these types of things that we see is that it's a systemic problem. So, you know, like it's not the fact that we're the end person saying no. The problem is there's a building right, and people just automatically think that a building right means that you've got a right to build. But that's not the case. You know, you don't just have the right to build, you have the right to apply to build. And the difficulty I have here is that I think there needs to be some more onus and more responsibility put back onto the seller through the real estate to advise the purchasers through their solicitors that this is the case, because as we've seen in this circumstance and the next one, these people have made a decision to build a house on a property that won't necessarily be approved. And, you know, they're obviously of the view that it would be approved. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made that outlay of money. And so, you know, they've now got a block of land that they've paid $500,000 for, but, you know, in theory, the value of that is probably diminished because there isn't realistically a legal opportunity to build a house. So, you know, we end up being the meat in the sandwich here. I mean, there should really be a traffic light system. You know, when you buy a house, you refer your documents to a solicitor, and the solicitor says, yep, we're good to go. I don't see any problems with this document. You've got a building right, blah, blah, blah. But there is no real look into the detail about whether it is going to be feasible to build a home on that block of land. Now, there should be a traffic light system, like a green, an orange, or a red. And you should get advice from your solicitor to say, look, it is possible to build a house, but we would put this in the red category. You know, there's probably a 10% chance you'll build a house here because there's a lot of things to tick boxes for to get approval. Orange, you know, 50-50. Green, 95%. But, you know, without that advice, these people are just left hanging on having made a major investment. And you know, I know the director feels dreadful about making this decision because it's not in our interest. You know, we want to encourage people to come and live in our area, and we want to promote living in the region. But you know, it's not an easy task when you've got these documents which are basically saying if you make this decision and it all turns to custard, you people are going to be held liable, and that's essentially where we're at. So you know, we really don't have any choice, in my view, other than to say no and agree with the you know, the professional advice we're getting from our public officers, because if we go against that advice, then, you know, technically we're liable for the decision. So, I mean, ultimately this has to go to a higher authority to be ticked. I think it's a real issue.
Councillor Ham.
I was just wondering if we could have the director speak on it, on the two garage and the proposed rural dwelling, and your opinion.
Oh, so I've written a lot of this report, particularly the areas related, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, particularly the areas related to the risk. And I've consulted extensively with our risk management team, who provided me with the advice that I've included in here. The assessment of the actual DA was done by our qualified DA assessment contractor. And we went through a lot of these issues and a meeting in particular with the consulting surveyor for both of the Lot 11 and 12s. We had differing opinions from the surveyor. The surveyor's report suggests that both sites are flood fringe, low hazard. Our assessment of those sites that they are both in high hazard floodways. So
these are two people with same qualifications.
Well, no, the surveyor is not a hydrologist. He's a land surveyor. He does, you know, he does subdivisions. The internal council engineer assessed this against the floodplain development manual as well as our development control plan. And I think there was even in respect of the development control plan, the surveyor tended to see that as being an optional document, whereas we view it as an absolute, you know, that is what tells us what we should do.
Yeah.
And the development control plan is very clear that within a floodway, no building should occur unless it's additions to existing buildings that aren't of a dwelling type nature. So consistent with that, we received no request to vary the development control plan. And so on that basis, and the fact that there's not just the possibility of a flood, there is the inevitability of a flood, that without a detailed flood study in our hands at the moment, councillors don't have the information required to make a decision in favour of the application. So there's a range of factors affecting this, but it all leads to the same place. To provide consent is a high risk approach, and consistent with council's risk appetite, the recommendation is to refuse. But it is worth noting that we have applied for funding to undertake a detailed flood study. This will take some time, but that will certainly make the job around assessing these sort of applications a lot clearer and a lot easier for the future, and address some of the concerns that you've mentioned there, John, because at least there will be a single document that is contemporary in nature that actually says this is what happens in it. This is the flood modelling for this area.
So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of expense and heartache in this application. And in a way you're saying, oh, well, you know, we'll get a proper flood plan and then maybe you would be able to, or is that not the case?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's not necessarily the case. A detailed flood study may actually rule out any further development along, in a wider area as well.
So then
But
the real estate agent could say, no, it's not going to happen.
So there would be a contemporary flood study, although the current flood study we have, which goes back to the 80s, actually identifies, in the absence of detailed modelling, it actually says very clearly that the immediate, the environs of the river no development should occur in those areas in the absence of a detailed flood modelling. So that's where the DCP has responded to those paragraphs in that 1987 flood study.
To be updated.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Thank
the applicants have made mention of the fact that other dwellings are in existence in the proximity of this land that they're applying to build on. What's the difference between particular blocks of land that we're talking about and the other areas where housing has been constructed?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, 100 metres can make all the difference as to whether it's within a floodway or whether it's in a flood fringe. So the further you get away from the main flow, and a lot of that is dependent on where the river breaks its banks and where the water, where the water goes from there. And in general, the location of these two allotments that are just on the other side of I guess it's an embankment that's been placed there for the Bomboli footbridge, the Bomboli Avenue footbridge. I think there is has been an assumption made that actually creates less turbulent water on the other side. However, the photos illustrate that embankment is breached as well at a less than 100-year flood level. Creating, a current that could be in the order of anywhere between 0.5 and 0.9 metres per second, which is, I guess, considered to be high hazard, and would, I think the words that are in the SES guidelines for this is, the safe passage of a vehicle would be impossible through that water that depth and that current. Also for a reasonably capable adult to actually get through that flood water, it does put people into danger. And so therefore it's not just the likelihood of flood, the likelihood of a adverse outcome as a result of that flood. If people would, people's behaviour is unpredictable. If someone were to attempt to evacuate that property and they got themselves into trouble and the worst possible outcome could happen, it still, the question would be asked, who approved this GA? And this is the issue that concerns me. I think the risk response to the risk questions within the reports indicate that, it's not just council that's at risk here, it's actually the potential inhabitants of any dwelling that's built on that site.
Would it be fair to say that perhaps the Land and Environment Court in its processes might have more information available to them than we have at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, very hard to say what the Land and Environment, there is no other flood study than the 1984, and that they would take into account all the information that we've taken into account. And so therefore, it's very hard to say which way it would go in the Land and Environment Court because you can never predict that. But that is an option. That is the option available to the applicants as of now, and should council determine to refuse the application, but they have had that option available to them for the last month or so if they wanted to, on the basis that these reports very complex, very time-consuming to prepare, means that the time it has taken to get into a council meeting means that they would have had the option to seek a determination at a different jurisdiction.
So if the opponents take this to the Land and Environment Court and they should determine in favour of the applicants, would that then pose any risk to council, or would absolve us from risk.
Council would not have made the decision. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Council would not have made that decision, so council would no longer have that risk available to them. But the risk would still be there, in my opinion, to occupants of any potential dwellings that occurred on that. So, you know, and I guess questions following the more recent flooding events in other parts of New South Wales, and knowing that there are people these days who are uninsurable because of where they have lost their properties or where they've located their properties. It does call into question the wisdom of putting dwellings in particular in floodways. Uninhabitable dwellings or uninhabitable buildings, that's a completely different matter. But anywhere where a human being is going to reside, there needs to be, I think, quite a lot of scrutiny and due diligence applied to the question of approving dwellings in those places.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like us to make sure that in deliberations of whether we're going to accept or reject this recommendation, that it's time due to climate change that we avoid using and thinking along the lines of having a 100-year flood or an unexpected event or an unprecedented event. If these comments are well beyond where our thinking should be, we should clearly recognise that climate change is not going to have an unprecedented event ever again. We have to expect the worst all the time, and that in making our deliberations, that's a significantly one consideration we have to hold in our mind.
Councillor Cox.
I think too, we have to remember that in the previous council, there was a property that was signed off, and now that person is now having severe impact from flooding because it was approved, and that to me makes this one, apart from anything else, very problematic for us as a council. And also thinking of the floods up north, some of those people have to pay $30,000 in insurance. So what will these people be having to pay for their insurance to be, if their building is impacted, to be able to replace it?
Councillor.
Can I just ask what the cost arrangements are in relation to the environment, in relation to our, if we lose?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. If council adopts the recommendations put forward by the officers, then the officers can then attend the Land and Environment Court on council's behalf to, I guess, defend or put their case in accordance with their recommendations. The opposite is true if the councillors put a recommendation or don't adopt that recommendation. In this case, it wouldn't go to the Land and Environment Court if the councillors had a different, but where officers and councillors, their opinion differs in that case, then if the council doesn't support the officer's decision, then you need to have legal representation. My understanding is that with the Land and Environment Court, all costs are retained by each party, and costs are awarded in that jurisdiction.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Go back out of committee. Councillor Councillor Smith, all in favour? Thank you. Okay, so we've got a move and a seconder for this. Anyone else like speaking on the proposed debate?
We move them both at once.
No, we've just moved the first one. Second one. So 11.6, lot 12 Bomboli Avenue. Recommendations are there. 173. All in favour? Against? So that's not unanimous. Councillor Benjamin is against. Thank you, councillors. Let's move on to 11.7. Similar recommendations, lot 11, which is alongside adjoining lot. Mr. Holton, this is the adjoining lot.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is the adjoining lot.
Thank you. So do I have a mover?
Move that one as well.
Councillor Smith, seconder. Councillor Ham. Discussion.
I would simply say that it's a very, very similar case and should be treated the same way, with the same view.
Further discussion? Yep, Councillor.
Can I just ask, does the proponent have any further right of reply to us? So if they come up with any further reports or expert opinions or the like that further evidence, they're
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Not unless they put in another application. They would need to submit a further application or a different application. So,
Councillors have put the motion 1, 2 and 3 there. For lot 11 Bomboli Avenue, all in favour? And against? It's Councillor Benjamin against. Thank you. 12.1 minutes of the Aerodrome Committee. Councillor Ham. Councillor Lana. Anything arising?
I'm just wondering, like in the report, there was, I don't know where, Councillor Lata, were you there just to discuss how the 12.5 is going? And I've heard you talk about the benefits for our community, particularly in the bushfire aspect of it. Do you mind speaking on that?
Yeah.
Director?
Well, I think this plays very significantly into the argument about where we are in whole of life costs. Last night in Tumbarumba, we obviously copped a lot of criticism about building infrastructure and the depreciation of that and the monetary cost from a council point of view of having to depreciate that whole of life asset. I suppose what this $12.5 million does in relation to the airport and our advocacy plan, it just provides the public with an opportunity to see what the other benefits are to the community rather than just seeing that it's costing us a lot of money to depreciate. Because in relation to this particular funding announcement, the previous council tried to downgrade the Tumut Airport to an airport that would not have been maintained to a standard that was acceptable by CASA, which would have meant that the standards that applied to that airport were non-existent, and it would have been just like another bush paddock with a runway strip. What that meant for the community was that you couldn't do an instrument arrival for an air ambulance or a helicopter or for the firefighting aircraft. So we were putting the community at risk.
Weren't you part of that?
No, thank goodness. So they didn't consult with anyone. They didn't speak to South Care Helicopter. They didn't do anything. They just basically wanted to downgrade it so they didn't have to send the engineer from council out once a month to look at it, save a bit of money, which was absolutely ridiculous. What this council has done is proactively gone about securing future funding and future-proofing this aerodrome, which are part of a significant transport hub and link and accessibility for our communities, for our businesses, for our snowy hydros, for our busies, so that we can have tourism operators like the good people out there, True North Helicopters, that are running, wonderful community-based tourism programs and firefighting capabilities. But what it's done is it's future-proofed our safety. So we've been able to now put $12.5 million into this airport so that we can guarantee that in the future we can land an air ambulance aircraft here 24 hours a day in marginal weather or at night. we're going to strengthen the runway. We're going to widen it. We're going to lengthen it. And we're going to put equipment in that'll make sure that it's safe to land 24 hours a day. And what that means for the community is under the current arrangements, which do meet CASA approval, but are obviously not to the specification that we're achieving under this $12.5 million, we were able to take off 60 aircraft a day for the RFS to go and bomb Tumbarumba and Tumut and Butlow and Yavin Creek and Albingo and Brungle and all these places, even Canberra. But what that meant was, because of the conditions of our current airport, we could only take off at 2/3 capacity with retardant water. So by upgrading this airport so that it's longer and wider and heavier pavement strength, these fire bombers can now take off with a full load of water and a full load of retardant, which means it's the equivalent of 90 flights a day. So another third capacity. So how many more houses could we have saved? How many more properties could we have saved? How many potential lives could we have saved? Add that to the benefit of having that 24-hour air ambulance facility, and you add the ability for Snowy Hydro to fly in a part, Visi to fly in a part to keep their businesses going for our local community, all the tourism operations, the flying, training, all those sorts of things, just an economic boost for the Snowy Valleys region and joining into Canberra and Wagga and all these places, connecting up. So to all those doomsayers out there that say, John Larder owns a plane, he's only doing this so he could have a bigger runway, you're fools, because I can land an aeroplane on the current strip. I mean, it's ridiculous to say John Larder owns a plane, he's got a conflict of interest. It's absolute rubbish, because councillors all own cars. Councillors make decisions on a daily basis about what roads we're going to fund. So it's complete nonsense. There is no advantage to me whatsoever. No. Absolutely none at all. All I'm doing and all the council is doing is basically ensuring that we're protecting our communities into the future. We're making it safe. We're making the connectivity and the viability of our region more prosperous through these sorts of initiatives with the assistance of people like Michael McCormack and John Barilaro. We are really, really going ahead. So these are the sorts of things these people up Tumbarumba need to take note of and get their heads out of the sand and have a look at the good things that are happening.
Thank you.
So can I just ask John, with that new landing district, would it be possible for us to have commercial flights like Rex Express coming like they used to?
Yeah, look, that's not the initial idea.
No, I appreciate that. It was just
certainly it will allow us into the future to look at a more
regional hub.
A more regional spoken hub type arrangement. Certainly not the bigger aeroplanes, but certainly the bigger charter type airplanes, the Visi jets. Possibly even the smaller Rex aeroplanes or Qantas Link. Definitely a possibility.
I think they used to compete.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
I'm very impressed by Mr. Larder's comments and his enthusiasm. And the question I would ask is how much effect this will have on the southern communities of our shire.
Well, I think that's the proof's in the pudding, Councillor Smith. At the end of the day, we're going to be able to take off now with the equivalent of 90 flights a day in a fire instead of 60. So that's we're essentially putting another third capacity in the air to water bomb properties. That's just one component of what this airport will do for the southern area. You look at somewhere like Currabia Wines down in the southern region. Somebody down there that's really, really having a go. Like they're doing great things with those vignerons. All of them. They're all fantastic. I mean, the Tumbarumba region for wine is probably one of the most understated regions in the world. It should be right up there being held on a pedestal because the Chardonnay that comes out of Tumbarumba is the best in the world, in my opinion. Absolutely fantastic. And for Jim and Bridget Ryan at True North Helicopters to be able to take people from Tumut and the region from that airport on winery tours in the helicopter up to the Currabie wines and all the other vignerons up there and have lunch and sample some wine, buy some product and help that visitor economy. What a great thing that is. Perfect.
Thank you. Probably fair enough on the airports at the moment. You know, this is the airport committee meeting. Anyone else want to say anything? Thank you, Lada. Councillor Lada, for your comments there. Sure. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Let's see if the traffic committee gets as much.
Sure it might.
Councillor Ham and Councillor.
With the traffic committee, I have a concern with the traffic, and this comes from the rail trail. And I will segue a little bit just to say, I know it's unusual. However, if anyone was there on Friday and on Friday there was a rail trail forum. On Saturday there was the official opening, delayed by a year, of the rail trail. And look, it was just such an exciting day. The whole atmosphere was electric. People from all over, from Melbourne, Sydney, Southern Highlands, Orange, Northern Rivers came. Was just, and every section of the rail trail had face painting or a clown or photographers or petting zoos or a gin bar or musicians. It was just really outstanding. So just my personal thanks, and I think on behalf of all the councillors, thank you very much to the organisers. And that is the organisers over 15 years to getting it up and going. Of course, the only complaint we're hearing in Tumbarumba is we now have to walk to our shops rather than having to park straight outside the front, because that's what an impact it has made. So that's been very, very exciting. I have a personal concern, having been the mother of 3 children, but one of them was just particularly enthusiastic on a bike, and it just terrifies me that rail trail goes through the Wagga Road and also the Link Road. And I know how I drive on those roads and others, and then trucks, you know, they just can't pull up if a little 6-year-old on a bike comes flashing out. It just really worries me. I'm just wondering if there's something that the local traffic committee, could they review it? It's a concern of mine.
We can ensure that that's mentioned next.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I need to seek some advice on 4.1. All those points are relating to the village at Tumbarumba, the retirement village. As a resident of that village, should I declare a pecuniary interest and not be involved in the discussion?
I don't think it'd be pecuniary interest, but certainly take an interest. So yeah,
No, well, it could be pecuniary because you pay rent there. Adoption of the recommendation, are you intending to comment on that in particular in there? Because this is a committee that's already had some discussion and made some recommendations to council. So it is your choice if you wish to declare, and I always recommend that you, if you're unsure, to declare. But that's
and you can either abstain from the vote or
Yes, I would like to abstain from the vote.
remain in the room.
If the abstinence from voting doesn't create a negative vote, then
Thank you. We'll call that.
so you're stating a pecuniary interest
yes,
in this item, and you're going to be involved in the discussion.
no.
You're not going to be involved in the discussion, so you're going to leave the room now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith, back to the room. Anything further on that? Councillor Bissell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I could just comment on what Councillor just made reference to the crossings of the roads with the rail trail. If for any reason we adventure into the next step, rail trails and another one, where the rail trail crosses a road should have been first priority for safety of rail trails. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It should have been something that was looked at when that rail trail was being developed. So I just make a comment that we need to make sure that as a council, we recognise that there are some very dangerous points and they should have been looked at well before.
I would imagine that there is a feasibility study. Perhaps we should go back to that before it goes to the committee. We should have access to that feasibility study. Said. Richard,
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, part of the design process will did include a review of the crossings, and there were some adjustments made to the alignment of the trail to make sure that those crossings were made as safe as possible, like not crossing at a bend while the road, for example, there was rerouting of the rail trail to pick the most appropriate across that road. But very much understand Councillor Ham's comments in regard to those crossings and children and the risk of them not stopping on a sign, which runs straight through. So I'll make sure that we do an independent risk assessment on that to see if there's any other additional treatments that we could do to try and improve that safety. Yeah, very much.
So could I just follow on that and just ask the question? I have been asked by people in the public, could we make traffic slow at those points? But we can't, can we? Like, we couldn't put a 40k or 60k zone.
More difficult, and that would be a determination made by Transport for New South Wales, the speed zone. I'd suggest we undertake a risk assessment first, independent risk assessment, see what comes out of that. If that makes a recommendation about speed along the roadways, well then that would trigger a review of the speed zones, but independent assessment first to see what that comes.
Thank you.
Is it possible that we could maybe look at something like a boom gate operation like they do for railway crossings? Just make sure that those kids stop, maybe just hit a green button, just to lift the boom up or something.
Yeah, sure. And I've seen similar arrangements like chicane type arrangements that actually force people to get off the bike and wheel the bike through.
that's what I've seen them similar.
So there are different treatments like that available to us, probably less complicated than an actual boom gate, but yeah, all options on the table, I think.
If I may, through the chair, I think the committee's requested some consideration of disability access in that. So it's a matter of finding the balance between safety, disability, user experience, etc. on the side. I think the safety assessment is a great way to start that.
Thank you. Anything further? Let the minutes be accepted. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you.
Councillors.
Will we bring back?
Probably sort me out, wouldn't it?
Last one. 4 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Those minutes were adopted. Minutes of the Extraordinary Chinook District Community Transport Advisement Committee, March 2021. Councillor Cross and Councillor Lada. Anything from there, Councillor Cross?
This extraordinary meeting was called because there was a lot of confusion amongst the Community Transport Committee about what their role really was and what had happened to how their position had evolved from being a grant to being under Transport New South Wales. So I invited Mr. Holton and Mrs. Andrews to come along and to clarify, and Mr. Jones clarify some of the issues that they were having around their committee. We since had another meeting, and at that meeting it was decided to dissolve the committee, and that they would be in a chat committee from now on. coffee and chat meeting from now on, which I think is a really good outcome, because I think in that way they will get a much better community engagement from their drivers and from the community to come in and sit down and have a casual cuppa and a chat about any issues they might have.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Any further? Motion all in favour? Carried. Councillors 12.4 minutes of the Canberra Regional Joint Organisation. 26th of March. Councillor Ham. Councillor Bissell.
I was just wondering, Mr Mayor, if you were there as Deputy Chair of the...
It was a Zoom meeting and I was there for most of it.
I'm just wondering, particularly in light of our recent discussions, how are we going with the rate peg review? What is happening there? So we're not the only council going that the pegging is too tough. We need more money coming in, I presume.
Yes, exactly. All councils are finding it very difficult.
Yeah.
And certainly talk around the table is that they're all struggling to stay in the black.
And is the FAGS grant, has that been...
Financial assistance grants?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've dropped significantly over the years. I think they're at 0.31.
And now it's got to cut in half.
Yes,
Yeah.
from 1% of GDP, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor.
Is this a result of the cost shifting that the federal government and the state government do to local government?
It's one of the things that impacts on us, yes.
Yeah. And the other question is what's happening with the emergency services levy, which has gone up by something like 64%.
It continues to go up.
Yes. So that's another example of cost shifting, because and what they're saying is that can come out of rates. Well, in a regional or rural community as we are, it just doesn't seem to add up that we can take $684 or whatever $1,000 out of our rate and pay for this emergency services levy.
That's right. It's gone up 65% in the last 4 years.
Yes.
And it's currently 748,000 per year, which is 8% of our rates.
That's ridiculous.
What makes it difficult, but it's going to a good cause when it's not.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
without doubt. But why should councils bear that cost when traditionally the state government was?
Yes. That's right.
And I hope Canberra JO is in there
Yes. Yeah.
fighting for that.
Exactly.
Putting that case
Bring the
through.
case forward. Yes. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I noticed on the agenda an incoming councillor's induction. And I'm just wondering if there's any plans afoot here in our region, around our council, to encourage potential candidates for the next election.
Yes, this is across the whole CRJO. So, and yes, it is the Australian Institute of Company Directors. It's an abridged course, and it will be available, I would assume, given that if council adopts it, the new council, councillors will be offered that opportunity. I would imagine it'll be budgeted for, right?
That's correct. We have a training budget included in the proposed budget for new councillors that recognises that we may get some councillors that don't have experience in that area, and the benefit that the councillors saw doing the company directors course previously. The bonus of what Canberra JO is proposing is that there'll be mixing of councillors from different councils and learning different experiences. It's a short course, and because it'll be offered at such a large scale across all the JO councils, there's going to be a very good rate for that. If the councillors who participate from the Snowy Valleys see that experience is worthwhile, we can then expand that course out to the full company directors, and that work that they have done gives them credit towards the full study eventually. In respect to your question, Councillor Smith, regarding the pre-work with the councillors, I might hand to Mrs Jones to just give us a briefing on the sessions that are going to be available in the area.
Councillor Smith, we're currently consolidating a program of pre-candidate sessions, information sessions for people in the community who are considering running for council. We're waiting for some dates from local government New South Wales for 2 sessions, somewhere in June, July. And we are currently negotiating with the Australian Local Government Association for a dedicated session to encourage community candidates across the Surrey Valleys region. And at this stage, we're pegging that for late May. So once those dates are confirmed and the program's locked down, we'll be able to circulate that obviously to councillors to disseminate to the community, but also through our normal communication channels.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Just like to make a comment that we're ahead of the pack again, having done 6 of us, having done that course, and how valuable it's been to us as councillors.
Absolutely.
Councillors, anything further from the CRJ motion? So that's unanimous. Councillors, open section of the Local Government Act provides the council to make close to the public that part of the meeting that deals with matters of a confidential nature. Section 10(2) lists such matters. The ground on which a meeting is closed to the public must be specified in the decision to close the meeting and recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The recommendation I have before us is that council move into confidential to consider the matters listed in the confidential section of the agenda in accordance with section 10(2) of the Local Government Act of 1993 for reasons specified. Commercial works update period ending February 2021. Move, Councillor Lara, seconded, Councillor Usman, in favour. Okay, back live again. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the confidential section where we discuss the commercial works update. I'll hand over to the General Manager. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. For item 13.1, commercial works update period ending February 2021, Council resolved to receive and note this report on the status of commercial works for the period ending February 2021. Thank you, Mr. Mann.
Thank you. And that concludes today's council meeting. And I'd just like to, before we close, thank Councillor Lada for doing the last meeting. I was absent, so thank you very much. Thank you all. And,